All right, everyone, I have on Amy Kiefer here, and she is part of Expecting and Empowered, which she co-founded with her sister, which is so cool. But they are on a mission to empower all women to thrive both physically and mentally throughout their pregnancy and postpartum journeys. So I'm really excited to chat with her today. I've been following them on Instagram for a very long time. And doing their workouts now that I'm in pregnancy, which I'll have to tell you guys all about. So I'm really excited to chat with you today, Amy. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. You and I have a shared passion of not only helping women, especially during birth, but also just getting women good information. So I'm really excited for the conversation.
Yeah, me too. I feel like a lot of people don't really think about it's becoming more knowledgeable, but like this season of life. I always say we prepare for our careers, our weddings, but when it comes to birth, uh, it's just like, oh, whatever happens is going to happen, which I mean, that can happen sometimes, but there's so much you can do to prepare to take control of it. So I'm really excited to dive into it with you today. I always like to start with, how did you even get into this work? Because between you and your sister both, you guys are like, you've done everything around birth, it feels like.
Yeah, I remember I was living in Chicago and I went to this course that was called Healthy Moms. And it was really the first time I ever truly learned about the birth process, everything that women go through during it. It was specifically for, anyone in the birth field. I was a personal trainer at the time, and I was the only one at my big gym in Chicago that was kind of trained to take on pregnant clients. So that was my initial like spark into the field. And then honestly, when I went through my first pregnancy, my sister Crystal was also going through her first pregnancy. We had both been trained and certified as people that could personal train women that were pregnant. And when we went through it ourselves, we were like, whoa, this is there. It's a lot. Your body goes through a lot. And I just remember there was this post on Facebook. My friend posted, she was pregnant too. She was like, does anyone know how to work out during pregnancy? And the answers that followed under that post as a professional made me cringe.
Hmm.
Women were trying to help, but at the time, keep in mind this was 7, 8 years ago, there really wasn't a good resource out there. Now we've come into the field and there's other competitors that have great products too, but it was a time where women just did not have any roadmap for their pregnancy. So I saw that post. I called my sister Crystal on the way home. Crystal comes into the picture. She's a physical therapist. She's a women's health physical therapist. So she's got all of this knowledge about the woman's body. I call her and I was like, Crystal, I think we could do so much better for women. I think we should do it. She said yes. And away we went. We didn't even know what we were getting into because it's been so much work, but
Hmm.
we have loved it. I mean, the testimonials we get from people that have done our programs, especially if they didn't work out the first time they were pregnant and then they worked out subsequent pregnancies, they're like, I didn't even know that you could feel this good during
Yeah.
pregnancy. So yeah, once we started going and we saw the impact we were having, we couldn't stop.
Hmm. Yeah. That's amazing. And it is so needed. Because I even remember like when I was getting into it, and you still hear a lot of it, right? Like, don't let your heart rate get above
Yes.
this. Don't do that. And then like, I don't know if that's very accurate. Like, I'm not an expert in it at all. But this pregnancy, I've made it a goal because I've always been an active person. But obviously now with two toddlers and being pregnant, like my activity is me chasing my kids. So, with my last pregnancy, I really, really struggled. With my first one, I had just done like a half marathon right before I got pregnant. I didn't run a lot during my pregnancy, but I walked a ton. I'd go on 2, sometimes 3 walks a day with my dog, do some weightlifting. And actually, I don't even think I really did weightlifting because it was COVID. The gyms had closed, and I don't think we had gotten our own equipment yet, which we have now. But I'd go to my in-laws and sometimes like lift weights over there. Um, and it was okay. Like, I felt like I could have been stronger. Um, my postpartum recovery was tough because of, I think, just more like mental things and how my birth went.
Hmm.
With my second, my pregnancy was not great. Like I
Yeah.
felt weak. I felt, um, it was just rough for me, like mentally. And then because I wasn't mentally there, then physically it was tough. Being pregnant through the winter in Chicago, I'm like, I don't want to go for a walk. I don't want to bundle up my kid. I don't, really tough getting into it. But after I had my second, we knew we wanted more kids. And I'm like, I'm a big proponent of like not trying to like focus on losing baby weight or anything like that. But this time around, I've been like, I just want to feel strong. Like I
Hmm.
want to be able to carry my kids up and down the stairs and not have my sciatica give out and my back hurt. And so, although I'm not working out as much as I would like, this is the most I have worked out in pregnancy so far. And I've been loving your guys' app and your videos and doing the workouts. And I love that it takes you like week by week and then even into postpartum. So I think that we don't have a lot of resources for that. Like, okay, let's say I haven't really worked out before and now I'm 20 weeks pregnant. Like, what can I do? So I think that's really amazing what you guys are doing, and definitely like a resource that's really, really needed. Um, so I'd love to um, talk a little bit about like what are the benefits of physical prep for labor and for birth, and why is it important to do that?
Well, truly, the answer is that there are so many benefits, but I will hit on the big ones in order to hopefully motivate some of you to give it a chance. One of the big misconceptions about working out during pregnancy is, like you mentioned, there's just a bunch of old school thinking around it. Like, if you didn't work out before you're pregnant, you can't start when
Right.
you are pregnant. That is just not true. Obviously, we always tell women to talk to their doctors, listen to their bodies, but we've had women start working out in their third trimester and then writing us like, thank goodness I did that. Because what you're going to find is if you strengthen your body, your aches and pains are going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
What you were saying is like, first of all, even if it's your first baby, pregnancy really is so physical. You're
Mm-hmm.
putting on this weight, and a lot of it is coming on the front side of you. Of course, it makes sense that your back could hurt. But what can you do? You can strengthen your back to be able to handle that weight coming onto your front. Another thing that you have already mentioned is one thing that we didn't know when we set out is how big of an impact we could make on women's mental health.
Mm-hmm.
We would do these, we called them accountability challenges. We still actually do them. But we would get these emails at the end of the 6 or 10 weeks that women worked out for. And most of them specifically talked about their mental health. Like, I cannot tell you how much better I feel when you take care of your physical health. And it's just researched. Anxiety and depression goes down when you work out. That's just like how our bodies work. And so if you are feeling, any changes from pregnancy in that way, working out is just such a positive thing. It also gives energy. A lot of us do feel low on energy when we're pregnant. And so you're like, are you kidding me? You want me to
Yeah.
work out? But it's energy giving. And a lot of people don't know that until
Yeah.
they start working out. Working out helps you sleep better. So that's another struggle that comes up in pregnancy. But if you worked out, the chances that you're going to sleep better. And then we have to talk about when you go into postpartum. This is a very physical season, no matter how you slice it, because you're going to be carrying a car seat that has an infant in it
Yeah.
while you're also trying to shut your SUV. And like, there's just so much. And even if you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, you're in a hunched over position. I cannot tell you how much pain was in my neck and back from the hunched over position that you are in to feed, to change diapers, to do anything with your baby. So my second, that's when Expecting Empowered was developed. I could do it my whole second pregnancy. I did not have that pain.
Hmm.
So it's like you have to train the muscles that you need to mother. It is a physical sport. And so, like, let's get you a little bit ready, because the pain that I was having after my first, it made my experience tougher. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was like in such bad pain that I felt like I had like anxiety because of my pain. And so if we can get women's bodies prepared for not only pregnancy, but also postpartum, that's what we really want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense too. Like, even if you know that every time you breastfeed, you're going to be having these aches and pains, you're not going to be looking forward to it.
Right.
You're going to be like, oh, the baby's up again. Like, even this morning, like, my toddler, my 16-month-old still nursing. And so it's funny. Sometimes I know what mood she's in when she wakes up, because either she wakes up and she's like, Mom, 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 and she just like stays in her crib till I come and get her. Or she wakes up and she's a little bit fussy. So I'm like, okay, she wants to kind of like nurse cuddle. She might doze off again. And that was this morning. I didn't even look at my phone. I don't know what time it was. But I went in there to rock her and nurse, and we both dozed off. And every time I doze off in the chair, I'm like in a weird position. My head like is funky, and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna wake up like so kinked up, and you can't like fully get comfortable. But even working out, like starting to like implement those things, I'm like, okay, well, if I can like engage my core and like move this way, and then like you kind of like you have more body awareness of how to do those things. So even now, like in my pregnancy, one thing I'm trying to focus on is every time I have to get up, engage my core, then stand up. And that's also going to be beneficial in postpartum as well. But I feel that tiredness thing. Like I
Mhm.
cried last night to my husband
Yes.
because I was like, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so tired. All I wanted to do was work out today. I didn't get to. And then that makes me feel like crap. And then like, just like the cycle continues. But every time that I have worked out in this pregnancy, I haven't necessarily wanted to. There's been like a handful of times where I'm like, yeah, let's get it in. But usually I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, but I should go work out. You always feel better. You never
Yes.
regret it. And it does give energy. I'm like, wow, like I do feel like, okay, I'm kind of pepped up. I can finish my day out. So it really, really is. It can be so hard to take that first step, especially if you haven't been working out for a while. But you always know you're going to reap the benefits and feel better from it.
Yeah. And one thing that we've done over the years is we really listen to our customers. And so one thing that they had said is like our workouts felt too long. So
Mm,
now we've made the pregnancy and the postpartum program so that they can be done in a half hour or less. And that's super important to moms because it's like, if you know, like, you know what? I'm just going to go work out for a half hour. That's all I have time for. That's all I can give. Like you're still going to get a really great workout in. And we also added a pause button because
yeah.
we know that some women are working out. They already have a baby or a toddler at home. So the fact that you could pause it, if you can come back, great. If you can't, we are the company that's like, give yourself credit for what you did. If you had
Yeah.
10 minutes that day and that's all you can do, that is way better than 0 minutes. So we
Mhm.
really try to take a gentle approach. We're not the company that's like, get it in. You have to do this. It's like whatever women can give in this season is only going to benefit them.
Yeah, I know. The other day when I did it, can't tell you how many times I had to push pause. And then I was like frustrated. And then I was like, okay, at least I'm doing it. Like at least I'm getting it done. And I was able to finish the whole workout, but I was like, pause again, pause again. Oh, my daughter just dumped an entire thing of cereal on my yoga mat while I'm working out. This is cool.
Yeah. We've all
Great.
been there. You're like, huh.
So I'm like, hopefully I was giving something to distract her so I could work out, but instead it ended up distracting me. So, but I'd love to talk about, I think a lot of people don't have awareness on how the pelvic floor is affected in pregnancy and birth. Um, I think we're all just kind of told that like you're going to end up peeing your pants later. But how does pregnancy and birth affect your pelvic floor?
Yeah, I love that the pelvic floor is getting more attention because it's just something that, back even 8 years ago when I was pregnant, not a lot of people were talking about it. So let's dive in. The pelvic floor, one visual that people can have is that your pelvic floor is like a hammock and it holds all of your organs in place. That's the job of it. But what happens when you're pregnant is all of the sudden you have this baby that is growing and continuing to put more weight onto your pelvic floor. So your pelvic floor is going to be stretched and it's going to be challenged. Now, one thing that Crystal and I really like to say is that sometimes, though, we blame the pelvic floor too much. And here's what I mean is that what happens is there's a pressure problem. You really need strength in certain parts of your body just to do the tasks of mothering, like we've been talking about. But let's say you need to put your stroller into your SUV and you don't have enough physical strength to really do that. What you do is you hold your breath, and that pushes your pelvic floor down. And so, if you're not having strength at other parts of your body, you are asking more than you already should of your pelvic floor, because it's already trying to hold a baby up for you. So, what we really want to look at is like full body strength. But yeah, your pelvic floor has a high demand during pregnancy. And what's really interesting is I'll tell a story from my first pregnancy. Just like you, I went to a pelvic floor physical therapist because I really wanted to be able to understand, am I doing everything I can do to have an unmedicated birth? It was such an interesting appointment because I came in there, I had been working out my whole pregnancy. I felt like I was really in touch with my body. She did do some internal work on me. And what she found is that my pelvic floor was very tight,
Mm-hmm.
which can happen to a lot of people. But she was like, Amy, I want you to know that tight does not equal strong.
Mm-hmm.
Tight means tight. So she started doing some manipulation on me. It hurt so bad because it was like my pelvic floor was like so tight. And what we know is that that is not optimal for birth.
Right.
During birth, we need our pelvic floor to get out of the way. We need to actually be able to relax our pelvic floor. And so, what her and I worked on is connecting my breath to my pelvic floor and making sure that I knew how to relax it to go into birth. So
Mm-hmm.
during our pregnancy program, we have breathing exercises and pelvic floor exercises built right in there so that hopefully you will be cued to start working with your pelvic floor, because we need it to cooperate in order to give birth. So and then what you mentioned in the beginning is like, we are the company that is really trying to educate women into understanding that yes, incontinence or peeing your pants is common, but it's not normal. And
Right.
there is plenty that we can do in order to avoid or lessen it. And we need to re-educate so that women aren't just living with it. I'm so passionate about it, especially after I learned the connection between incontinence and postpartum depression. So,
Mm.
you might not link those in your mind, but all of the sudden, if you are this grown woman
Yeah.
that is peeing your pants and you have to worry about the smell, you have to worry about the color clothes that you wear, you have to worry about, is there a bathroom close enough to where I am right now in case you have that urgency? That changes your life in a negative way. And so we want to help women get the right information so that they can avoid that or minimize it or get help with it, because you do not have to live with it.
Mm-hmm. I think that anybody listening, I feel like the generation who are moms from their 50s and above are like, this is just what's going to happen as you get older. You're just going to sneeze and pee your pants. You can't jump on a trampoline anymore. You can't, do these things because this is just what happens when you have babies. And again, that information like wasn't around then. Um, and it is around now. Like there is so much that you can do. I feel pretty fortunate that like I haven't had those issues. The only times I pee a little bit now, especially like being pregnant, is if I'm like sitting in a relaxed state and like a sneeze sneaks up on me and I didn't have time
Mhm.
to like engage.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to engage and then sneeze and I'm fine. But if it comes out of nowhere, or sometimes for some reason, every time I'm pregnant, brushing my teeth, I gag so hard.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm not pregnant anymore, it's gone. But the other day a gag snuck up on me and I was like, oh, now I got to change my pants. Like I peed a little bit, but outside of that, like, I mean, I ran the half marathon after I had both my kids fine. Like I didn't have any issues. And I think a huge part of that was going to pelvic floor therapy while I was
Yes.
pregnant with my first, because it was the relaxing. It was the same thing. It was like, the previous generations again were just like, let's teach you Kegels to strengthen and tighten. And that's it. And it's like, no, as much as you can strengthen, you have to learn to completely relax your
Right.
pelvic floor and then find that neutral state and not live in tightness and not live in complete relaxation. And so I feel like that really, really helped me to learn how to really use my pelvic floor. Um, however, I don't know if that helps with hemorrhoids because I have hemorrhoid issues.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because hemorrhoids are a pressure problem too. And
Yeah.
so it's just, educating people on, yes, those are also common, but are there things that you could do to help lessen the chance that you might get them? And that's where we talk about, okay, we have to strengthen other parts of our body. And then like I'm a nurse. I'm also a nurse. So I'm a personal trainer, a registered nurse, and a doula. And I could educate people on pooping all day
Hmm.
because it really should, just like pushing a baby out, it really should be a passive action.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be bearing down and really pushing when we're pooping. And at Expecting Empowered, we'll talk about anything because this is just like things that people need to know for their life. I even educate my toddlers on, okay,
Yeah.
we want to take deep breaths.
Hmm.
It's such that like if you don't know much about pooping, it's like people do bear down and really try to push their poop out, but we really want to get to a place where we're relaxed, we're
Yeah.
breathing in and out, and we're letting it come naturally.
Right. Right. I know. I got really bad hemorrhoids after my first, and honestly, after my second. That's like my biggest fear with my third. Like I'm more scared about the postpartum hemorrhoids than I am about giving birth because it felt like I was pooping
It's
out
so,
shards of
yeah.
glass. Like it was awful. So I know I've actually been looking into a few things. I'm like, I know I need to do some work. And then also there's like some herbal stuff that I'm gonna get and other things to try to prepare myself because I'm like, I don't want to be pushing my baby out and thinking about my hemorrhoids.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So I'm like, I don't need that in my life. Um, so we talked about like the benefits of working out during pregnancy and how it helps birth. What about how does that like roll over into your postpartum recovery?
Yeah, I mean, there's studies to show just like it makes your postpartum recovery easier, no matter
Yeah.
how you birth, whether it's vaginal or cesarean. Birth is a big trauma to the body. And
Yeah.
so if you're going into it and you do have more muscle, more endurance, more everything, that's only going to help you in postpartum. And then as you and I've been talking about, postpartum is very physical. Like you don't just get to go home and recover by yourself. You
Right.
have a baby that needs a lot from you to take care of. And so it gets really hard because what I don't think gets enough attention is that we should really prioritize the mom's recovery. It matters to her physical health, it matters to her mental health. It's very, very important. I think what people don't know too is there's a lot that you can do for your recovery, the day after your baby comes. And now we're not talking about working out, we are talking about breathing. We are
Hmm.
talking about helping your pelvic floor to recover. We are talking about walking, very, very gentle things that you can do to set yourself up for success. But we know that women that work out during pregnancy have less aches and pains and incontinence in their postpartum period. And that is so important to your quality of life. And if you think about it, like I said, some of these are really connected to having, feeling more anxious or feeling more down. The way that you feel in your body really matters. Of course, we're already up against a big event, but
Hmm.
if we can set ourselves up for success, we will just feel better.
Hmm. Yeah, that kind of leads me into like my next point of just in that postpartum care, we're kind of given the like, oh, you're 6 weeks now, you can work out and you can have sex. And that's it. Like, that's the only guidance that we're given. And I'd love to kind of talk about like what's wrong with that hard deadline and the things, like you said, that we can kind of maybe start before that are going to lead us to be able to actually start working out again.
Yeah, the trouble with any hard deadline is there's no nuance in it. And so every woman's birth experience is going to
Hmm.
be unique and her recovery is going to be unique too. I mean, we talk about women that go through traumatic births. Do you think that they physically or mentally are going to be ready for intercourse at 6 weeks?
Hmm.
Probably not. There's
Right.
a lot of healing to be done from a physical standpoint, but then also from a mental standpoint as well. And so I don't love that 6 week deadline for anything because it's like if she doesn't feel ready, even if it's just mentally, then that is to be the thing that is respected. She knows her own body and mind better than anyone else. But at Expecting and Empowered, what we really wish that would change in America, and we probably know this isn't going to happen anytime soon, we wish that a women's health physical therapist would be the one to give you the green light.
Yeah.
Because the OB, I've had friends that have told me their OB did not even check down there at all during the 6-week appointment. So, how could you give anyone a green light if you don't even look at their pelvic floor at all? And then, what we like to say too is OBs are trained in a very specific area,
Right.
and it is not pelvic floor like, is this woman ready to work out? Truly, they're not running the battery of tests that you will get from a woman's health physical therapist. Obviously, you and I know we wish doulas were available to everyone. We wish women's health physical therapists were available to everyone. That is not the case. And so all we can do is try to give women as much education as we can into signs and symptoms to look out for to tell you if you're ready or not ready. So that's something that we do over at Expecting and Empowered. We put so much information out in case that you don't have access to a women's health physical therapist, because we know that that is an experience. Unfortunately, a lot of people will write into us, I wish I could go. They live in an area, I know, if they're living in the country, it's like they don't have anyone that is trained
Yeah.
that way or that they
Hmm.
can go to. So just really taking the approach of, just because someone says you're ready at 6 weeks doesn't mean you are. And also watching your own symptoms. A
Yeah.
lot of women, unfortunately, they jump into whatever they were doing. Say it's
Hmm.
CrossFit, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
they're jumping around and they're peeing their pants, and that doesn't stop them. Well,
Hmm.
your body is giving you this very nice specific symptom to tell you, I can't handle this. You
Hmm.
don't want to ignore that.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's such a good point. And I think that we do kind of take advantage of the fact that like we live in areas where we do
Yeah.
have access to that. And that is the good thing with social media, that there is so much free information out there. And then also leading into deeper information through courses and stuff that we can do, because not everybody has access. When you're telling
Right.
that, I was reminded of my cousin when she had her firstborn. The closest midwife was over 2 hours away,
Right.
and the baby was born during a blizzard. The midwife couldn't make it, and her husband delivered the baby.
Oh
But
my
it was
gosh.
it was wild. So, um, but yeah, I mean, there's just places, people have reached out to me too. They're like, I wish I could find a midwife in my area, but there just isn't one that's close. And then also one that might, it's out of pocket. I know for here, in order to do home birth, it's out of pocket. Like my insurance doesn't cover it. I can maybe try to submit it. I don't know how much they're going to pay. But those are big expenses. And so it's hard, because I know for me, like I want to, like, you want people to have doulas, you want people to have these other access. And then there's just like so much too that's like not affordable. And then it's really,
Right.
really frustrating. So it's like, okay,
Right.
how can we get as much free information out there as possible? And just help people along the way to look out for those signs and symptoms, to, even press people in your area for like more, for better. Um, because we've been to doctors here that, even living in Chicago, it's very, very hard to find a good functional medicine doctor here. My
I
husband and I
know.
have been to like a handful of people, and we're like, no. So
I know.
and then the people that I do find, it's like thousands of dollars, and it's like, all right, well, we can't do that right now. So I guess we'll just have diarrhea all the time. It's fine. I'm like
Yeah, yeah,
joking.
yeah.
um, but I'd also like to talk about, while we're on the subject of like postpartum recovery, that we still have this like bounce back culture that can be like so harmful. And I think that's the other pressure that people feel when they hit that 6-week appointment, is like, okay, now it's time for me to lose the baby weight. And I also have seen so many programs catered to that, to like get your body back and things like that. And I think that messaging can be pretty harmful. So I'd love to talk about how yours is a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, we do not and will not ever use before and after pictures of women's bodies, because we don't think anything is before or after. It's
Yeah,
always you, and it's always who you are. And we actually find them to be really predatory, because often the woman's before picture is like the day after she gave birth. Of course, your body is going to look different. It's supposed to. It goes through an entire process of which, it's going through a natural process, and we shouldn't use those photos to sell programs, in
right,
our opinion. And so we don't use before and afters. We don't talk about weight loss at all. I mean, it's not that our programs, if that's your goal, it's not that our programs don't do that. We don't believe in marketing them that way, because we don't want a woman has so much to deal with and she's going through so much. It is our belief that her focus should be on her healing.
right,
It's all about healing first, and everything else will come after that. We are both moms to 3 children. And so we understand the process of recovery. We understand that, if you're breastfeeding, some women you're not going to lose weight.
right,
And that shouldn't even be your goal if you're breastfeeding, because you have to nourish this whole baby and yourself. Like, that's a
right,
lot. And so just like having so many friends that have, held on to weight if they're breastfeeding, or even if they're not breastfeeding, just like the process of it. It's not black and white. If people are trying to sell you that, I would say go a different direction, because it just does not work the same for everyone. And we just have to
hmm,
be really careful with vulnerable women, as most of us are when we're postpartum.
right, right. I love that. I can honestly say that like before and after pictures have been triggering for me postpartum,
Yeah.
because I, like you said, everybody's different. So I've seen people who like, I remember being taught like if you breastfeed, the weight's just going to fall
Right.
off. And that's so not true. Um, and I've even learned more recently that you require more calories breastfeeding than you do pregnant. So it's different, that shouldn't be your focus of losing weight, but our culture has made it so
Mm-hmm.
much that way. And so it can be so easy to compare like you're 6 months postpartum and you see somebody with their abs out and you're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, but when I never even had abs to begin with, but somehow
Yeah.
that's my goal,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it can be very, very triggering. So I love that you guys don't do that, because I think it can be tough in that phase of life, especially when you're catering to that season. Because the comparison is already so huge.
Right.
So I love that. I'd love to talk about C-sections a little bit, because that is another area where there's such a huge gap in care.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you guys have a cesarean prep course, because again, there's such a big gap in care. And most people think that there's nothing that you can do to prepare for this. And again, you're having major abdominal surgery and told, just don't lift anything super heavy and we'll see you in 6 weeks, and nothing really in between. And I've heard from so many people just different issues with scars and feeling like their organs are sticking together and not knowing that there's things that you could do. So I'd love for you to kind of touch on a little bit of the cesarean recovery process, and maybe a few things that you can do that you're not being told about.
C-sections are something that we are so passionate about. As you and I talked about over on our podcast, we know that our cesarean section rate in America is still relatively high compared to other developed countries. So there are a lot of people having C-sections. As we also know, they are not always avoidable. And so what we need to do is we need to educate women on how to recover. My sister Crystal has had 3 C-sections. All of her kids have been born via C-section. She's also a women's health physical therapist. So, when you combine personal experience with professional knowledge, that you are in really good hands. And so we constantly educate about C-sections over on our platform. What we know is that there's a lot of preparation that you can do before you have a C-section. Unfortunately, not everyone knows if they're going to head down that road or if they're going to have a vaginal birth, but really preparing yourself physically is a lot the same as we've been talking about, like the stronger that you are before you go into your C-section, the more that that's going to help in your recovery. One thing that we know, and I've had some of my personal friends experience, is like the pain that you are in after a C-section when you're home and you're trying to even just get out of bed. It is so challenging. But if you set your body up for success, that looks like, of course, working out before, but we also have some really good tips on just, it sounds so silly, but how you get out of chairs, how
Mm,
you get out of your bed to protect your scar. We have all of that information over on our feeds and on our blog. We also, as you mentioned, we just came out with this course. Our goal with our courses are to make them very affordable because we're trying to get the knowledge out into the world. And our C-section course has been selling really well, which we were kind of surprised by. But if you think about it, I just don't think that women are getting that information. So we
right,
feel so honored if anyone comes and gets it from us. But that takes you all the way from like what you can do before your C-section. People don't know that inside of their birth, they have options. So
right,
you could still have a playlist going. If you had a doula, I've been in C-sections. Your doula can come into your C-section with you. You can decide that you want the doctors to narrate the birth out loud to you so you know what's going on with your body. Some women like a clear drape, or they call it like a dropped drape, so that you can see your baby being born. You know, some women, that's not what they would want. But some women, you could have your baby on your chest right away. Like if the baby's okay and that's your preference, that you want to do that skin to skin so you can have that experience, that's possible. So it's kind of the theme of the two podcasts we've done together. It's like, if women know their options,
yeah,
they are set up for success. And then the recovery process from a C-section is obviously different from a vaginal birth. We take you from day one inside of our app of a C-section all the way through. And what that means is that there's a lot that you can do for your scar that I can't tell you how many women we've talked to that had no idea that you could do anything if your scar is numb, if
mm,
your scar isn't appearing the way that you want it to. All of these things, there are things to do, like scar mobilization, scar desensitization. We educate. I can give you resources that you can give the people on how to do that. You can do that yourself. You can do that at home. It does not take much time, but it can really save you from, like, I've had friends where like they can't even touch their C-section scar. They can't even look at their C-section scar. And what we try to do is to slowly get them to a place where they are more comfortable with it. Their scar feels better. And, you know, that's our goal, is like just give people really good information, because they don't get enough in the hospital. They absolutely just do not get enough in the hospital. And then we're sending them home after this huge surgery. And like I said about postpartum recovery, you have a baby to take care
right.
of and your
Mm-hmm.
body really hurts. So we're obviously very passionate and obsessed with helping C-section moms because we just feel like they don't get enough help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I I've also seen like the opposite of where I've had a couple of friends who have been like, I felt fine after my cesarean and they were doing way too much. And one
Yes.
of them actually ended up in like an emergency surgery because of something that happened. Because she was just pushing herself. She's like, I'm fine and up and down and whatever. And it's like, you're not supposed to do that either. Like, even if you feel okay, don't like, your body needs to heal, like not only from a major surgery, but still from that placenta sized wound inside your
Yeah.
uterus. So there's still healing to do, and you need to let your body do that.
Absolutely. They like those suggestions for, you know, how much weight you can carry should be taken very seriously. And the other thing I wanted to point out, which is really interesting about C-sections, the way that my sister Crystal talks about it is your body didn't know that it was going to have a C-section. Even if it was a planned C-section, your pelvic floor has
Mhm.
carried that baby, that heavy baby, on it for so long. So like, don't be surprised if you have pelvic floor issues. Like, I think women, the misnomer is that because you birthed via C-section, you're not going to have any issues with your pelvic floor. And that's just not true. So we need women to, you know, take those suggestions seriously. Like, your body really went through a lot and it needs to recover. And the risk of doing too much is not worth it.
Yeah.
Like, just to put it plainly, because like you said, your friend ended up in that scary situation.
Right, right. I remember when I was younger, because what you just said about like your pelvic floor, didn't know that. I remember when I was younger hearing some people be like, oh no, I'm just going to get a C-section. I don't want to mess anything up down there. And like hearing people say that. And like, as you get older, like, first of all, you know that your vagina goes back to normal. Like, I remember asking my husband, like after our first, and being like, does it feel normal down there? Can you tell that I pushed out a human, or is sex still okay? And he's like, you can't tell. He's like, it's
Yeah.
fine. And things do like go back. But your pelvic floor is still affected. So it's
Right.
like having a planned C-section just because you don't want to mess things up down there doesn't mean things aren't going to change due to
Right.
pelvic floor stuff. And things like that. Also, just even the way your anatomy looks can change during pregnancy, and it might not go back to the way it was before. So, to each their own, but just because you don't want to mess things up down there, a C-section may not save you from that.
Right. Right. I mean, both types of births obviously have side effects. And
Yeah.
so there's no easy way out, because people have also called C-sections that.
Right.
If you've seen a woman that had a C-section, like, because I visited Crystal directly after she had her babies, like, it is a big surgery. And most women, they have a recovery process that is challenging.
Right. Well, and like you said, it's a big surgery, but it's so common that it's not treated as such.
Right. Right. And
It's not
it's
like,
a surgery that happens to just women, and we know
right,
how that goes. So I don't think it
right,
gets enough credit for what it is. And we want
totally.
women to
Gosh.
recover well.
I was just like imagining, what if men had cesareans? I'm like, they would be the biggest babies ever.
Because
Like,
it is a hard recovery. You know what I mean? Like,
right. But them trying to like
yeah.
recover from a surgery and take care of a baby and their nipples hurt. I'm like, I can't even imagine, because we all know that they get the man flu and it's like the
Yeah.
end of the world. So, it is crazy to me. I just interviewed somebody about sex, and she was talking about how they used to think that there was, I can't even remember, I'm not going to know the exact numbers, like so many thousands of nerve endings down there. But that's because they had only studied it on female pigs. Like, women's bodies haven't even been
Yeah.
studied on. Like, they just recently studied a woman's body and discovered that there's more. And I'm like, this is so true in all of medical history. Like, women weren't a part of studies for until like the last 50 years. And even then, we're still so behind on discovering root causes for women. Like, I think research even shows it takes 4 years longer for women to get diagnosed with the same condition as a man, because we just don't know what it looks like in a woman. So yeah, it's that's like a whole nother
Well,
podcast,
yeah.
but it's
And I
true.
mean, like, even during this podcast, it's like the fact of the matter is women can still get shamed for talking about things that are so normal. I know a part of the content that we've run in the past, is sex positions in the third trimester. If you want to have sex,
Yeah.
what is the most comfortable ways that you could have sex? And some people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys covered that. But it's like, it's a normal part of life.
Yeah.
We talk about sex postpartum because obviously there's a lot of hurdles to getting back to a sex life that you enjoy postpartum. We're willing to talk about it, but the fact that we shame women that are giving good education, from a professional standpoint, is just also so wild. Like, we're
Yeah.
supposed to just be quiet, keep it buttoned up. No one wants to hear about your hemorrhoids, is like just not the type of business that we are. I know you aren't
Yeah.
either. It's
Right.
women need to be prepared, and without honesty, there can't be preparation.
Totally. Totally. I mean, anyone who listens to this podcast or follows me on Instagram knows that I have hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
But because I found it, because I didn't know tons of people that talked about it. Then when it happened to me, I'm like, yeah.
I pooped my pants during my third birth. Like, it was and like, I literally told the nurse, I was like, I know I have to poop. And they're always like, nope, that means the baby. That means the baby. I'm like, I literally can tell you I have to shit right now.
Right. Right.
And she's like, okay. And then that happened. I was like, I literally told you that this was coming. And I
Right.
guess now we're just all dealing with the repercussions, which is not a big deal. Like we always say, you have to, I know so many women fear that. And it's
Right,
like, it was the smallest deal in the entire world. So that's just also a side note of
right,
honesty is like that. If that's your biggest fear, I respect it, but like try to just wrap your mind around there's going to be I also don't think women understand the amount of fluid that comes out of them when they're giving
right,
birth. Just the
right,
fact that when we watch movies and we see a water break, it's like one big pop when most
right.
women who have had their water break, you're going to be leaking for from here on out, you know?
Right. Well, because your body continues to produce amniotic fluid even after your water's broken. And a lot of people don't know that. But yeah, the pooping thing, yeah, I've been at a lot. I've been not at a lot, but a handful of births where they've been scared of that. They're like, I don't want to poop. And I'm like, you have to push that out of your mind. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not pushing because you're scared you're going to poop while you push, because that's been a real fear where people are like, I don't want to
Yeah.
push because I'm going to poop. And it's like, it's okay. Like, you have to get past that. You have to, move past it because most births I've been at, you do poop. Like,
Yeah.
it just happens. It's a part of birth. There's a lot of things coming out and nobody cares.
Literally no
Nobody
one
cares.
cares. Just to like soothe your mind further, the nurse literally just like takes a towel and like puts it like gets it out of the way right away.
Before you
They've
even
seen
notice
it
that
a
it
million.
happened.
Yeah. A lot of times, yeah, women don't even necessarily know that they
Right.
did.
Hmm.
And I love that. But to say that every professional on the scene has seen it a million times before is just accurate.
Right. Right. I remember telling a story not too long ago about somebody was asking me, I don't remember, something that happened in birth. And I was like, I legit this lady was naked, bending over the bed, and I'm down squatting, like giving her hip squeezes, and she just straight up farts in my face. And I'm like, it happens. Like,
Oh my
they're like,
gosh.
what'd you do? I'm like, I just kept squeezing. Like, you just keep going. Like, I know she
I
can't control it.
I had a lady after a C-section, she puked and she tried to catch her puke in her hands and it flew into my hair.
Oh
And
my
she was
God.
like, "Oh my God, you didn't even flinch." And I'm like, I mean, if you're gonna be working in this environment, you gotta be ready for anything.
Right. Totally. Totally. And I love that you guys do talk about sex because again, it can just kind of still be taboo for women or some sort of shame around that. But also, there's tons of health benefits to having sex in pregnancy
Hmm.
and even postpartum. So, I do feel like it's an important part of the conversation. And obviously, that goes deeper into how you're feeling mentally, how you're feeling physically, your connection with your partner, and so much. But it is an important conversation to have. So
Absolutely.
that's really good. And like I said before, like I've realized like this pregnancy, I just need to train because I want to be strong. Um, my last pregnancy, I didn't feel strong. And this time I'm like determined to make this my strongest pregnancy yet. So I'm really excited that I have your guys' app and that I'm working out with it because, excuse me, it has made a difference because it is doable and that 30 minutes um, is doable. And I feel like I'm just like able to, I don't know, you just feel better. Like, and I wanted to change this time to do the strength training. Before, I walking has tons of benefits, but I'm like, there's so many benefits to strength training in the long run. Like, they're showing it builds bone density. Like, that's one of the best
Hmm.
things you can do for aging. And so I'm like, I just want to feel strong. So yes, I'm very grateful for your guys' app. Before we wrap up, I'd love for you to tell us about your courses, your programs, your app, where people can find you, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, our app is at expectingempowered.com. You can join it right away. 30-minute workouts, and they're made to be done at home because when my sister and I were both pregnant and postpartum, we just found it easier to work out at home. Honestly,
Yeah.
we didn't have like the time or energy to leave and go to a gym. So that's so important for us. It's minimal equipment. The video plays and you just do exactly what the woman is doing. So we try to make it as simple as we possibly could. There's a scheduling feature, there's a pause feature. So like we've really taken to heart the feedback from the customers and we love the place that it's in right now. So our app is our main thing. Um, Pregnancy, postpartum, there's a further out, more challenging one. If you've already done the postpartum guide, all in there. C-section is in there. Like you could literally follow from the time you had a C-section all the way to 33 weeks out, and we would have you recovered. And then we do have courses. One is prepping for labor and delivery. It just gives you all the information, including position changes and things like that, pain relief measures. It's from the eyes of a physical therapist and a doula. So that's great. And then we have the C-section one that we were talking about. So like, if you know you're going to have a C-section, this course will get you completely prepared. You can find us at Expecting and Empowered everywhere. Our biggest platform is Instagram. Of course, we've got the website that hosts the app and the courses.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I feel like I'm sure a lot of the listeners follow you guys. You guys have such a great listener base. And like I said, I've been following you guys for quite a while. Also, you guys are funny.
Yeah. My
Like,
sister is a
your
nutcase,
sister, right?
and she just like and then like the other team members are funny too. So we just like, we give great education, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I think that just makes the education easier to digest.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I first found you guys, I saw like one of your sister's videos and I was like, she's hilarious. Like
Yes, she's wild.
she looks like a hoot. I love that you guys are sisters also doing this. Like that is just so much fun. I'm sure you guys drive each other crazy sometimes too.
Oh,
but
absolutely. But it is like, it's just so rewarding. And then like the other members on our team, everyone is so passionate about what we do. Like we really are just trying to help women through this really challenging physical time in life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then one last question before we wrap up. Since the podcast is Morning Chava, I like to ask, how do you take your morning Java?
What does that mean?
Oh, coffee. Your coffee.
I thought it literally meant like something deeper. Okay. You guys, one huge change I have made to my routine is that I make myself eat before I have my coffee. And that is just like a quick tip from, my holistic doctors, but I am very simple. I just make my coffee and I take it with just a little bit of creamer and I am set to go.
Nice. Very nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for all of your wisdom and insight. And I'm really excited for the listeners to hear it.
Thank you so much for having me.